Armando.
And I'm Eddie Z.
And this is Remakes, Reboots, and Revivals,
an original podcast
about unoriginality.
And this is part 3 of our 4-part Snow White series. And today we're doing a lightning round. Lightning round. Where we compare and contrast the original 1937 film to this remake, the 2025 remake. And today we are joined by a very special guest. We are joined by TikTok's Babbity Kate, who is a popular content creator when it comes to all things Disney princesses.
Kate is a prolific TikToker about all things Disney princess. Her video essays and culture criticisms explore the media that shapes girlhood. She is especially known for her absurdly long deep dives into the lore of the American Girl characters on YouTube. You guys can find her on Babbity_Kate on YouTube, Babbity.Kate on TikTok, which I highly recommend you follow, and Babbity_Kate on Instagram.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for asking me.
I am so excited to have you on. Kate, I think I wrote this in the email, but I'm just letting everyone know I have been getting your content for I think a couple of years now. I thought I was getting it so much, I just assumed I followed you, and then I just recently saw it, just oh, I'm not even a follower, so I started following you officially. But I just love your stuff. And I do have a couple of quick questions before you get into Snow White. Do you mind?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. So first things first, what made you start creating Disney princess content?
Well, I have a lot of opinions about the Disney princess, and that's a big part of it. But I also am really drawn to what I've taken to calling pantheons of female characters. Definitely the Catholic school is jumping out right now. But these figures that come from narrative but sort of get plucked out of their narrative world to act in a more abstracted way. There's something about having a set of them that all have their various symbols, their various color schemes that are meant to be aspirational to young girls. There's something about that I have to get to the bottom of. I have to figure it out, which is very similar to what draws me to the American Girl characters. And I think it's just a shared language that so many people growing up, especially growing up a girl in America, it's a shared language that you're expected to be able to speak and understand. And so I love trying to speak that language with other people as adults.
By the way, do you have a favorite American Girl?
Felicity. I'm a Felicity.
Felicity was my favorite too.
Really?
Yeah. My sister was big Samantha, and I was always big Felicity. So
it's always wonderful to meet another Felicity.
That's true. I haven't met too many others who say Felicity. So
no, shockingly few.
What?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know American Girl. Who is Felicity?
Boy, do we not even have time to get into it. But Felicity's the best one, and she has the best dresses. So that's what you need to know.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
she's from 1774.
Nice. So I had the other question I had was, do you have a favorite Disney princess?
Yes, Ariel. I was an Ariel girl as a kid, and I haven't grown out of it. I really watched that tape over and over and over as a kid. And it's funny to name her and also name Felicity because they are, the headstrong redheads of the group. But I think there's something in the way that both of them are almost constitutionally disobedient that really appeals to me.
Did you have an opinion on the Disney remake of Little Mermaid?
I really liked it. I definitely had some quibbles, but as a lover of the original, it really spoke to me and really made me fall in love with it all over again.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we were both pleasantly surprised on that one, right? I remember
it was one of the better ones, absolutely.
Yeah,
but Rob Marshall, directing it, I think did that movie a lot of favors. So.
And then the last question I have, has Disney sent you a cease and desist letter because you come for their redesigns with such fury?
Listen, I know how things should be. I know how they should look. It's not my fault that I know the answers. It's so funny to be asked things like that because I also get constantly accused of being paid by Disney
Really?
whenever I have an unpopularly positive opinion. So no, absolutely not. I think, I don't know. The problem is I don't profit enough off of it.
Mm.
I think maybe if I were more successful, they would find a way. But for now, they're just letting me throw tomatoes, and I
Nice.
enjoy it.
Good. Well, good. I hope they don't stop because I do love your content. So, all right. So we're gonna be doing today. We're talking. You're here. We're gonna be talking about the new Snow White. We're comparing the original 1937 film to the new 2025. I guess we could call it a flop, right? We'll see how it fares in the box office, but it's not looking good. We're just going to be comparing first the plots of the film, and I'll kick things off. I actually thought the plot for the new film was stronger than the original one because the original one kind of had no real plot. Things just happened to poor Snow White, and she had no agency. And I think the new film, tried to give her a little bit of depth. They tried to make her stand up against the tyranny that was the evil queen. And I think for those elements, it was a little successful. It wasn't. I don't know if they were carried out the best way possible, but you know what? They tried, and I think that's okay with me.
No, I agree. Actually, I enjoyed the plot for the live action. Um, they did try to give Snow White kind of like the element of like kind of want like being put in a position where she has to rise up for her people.
Hmm.
And all that is wrapped up in the power of kindness. That all is done, her motivations of her expression is of expressions of kindness.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely more like she has more to do in the new film for sure. She actually has a voice and she uses it. But it's funny because you keep saying they try to do this in the movie, and the movie tries a lot, but I don't know if it 100% succeeds. And most of the movie made me realize I was like, wow, everything they kind of added to the story, I didn't really need because I already kind of got it, except for Jonathan, Prince Charming, and that whole thing.
Right.
So, especially when it comes to the queen, right?
Oh,
And we'll get to the queen in a little bit. So, because of that, I don't know if all this added flub to the new film and all the predictability and just kind of wanting to somewhat, be a callback to the original film, but also completely change it and kind of be like, oh, forgive us for these 30s films that are really, really kind of
mhm.
prejudiced and flawed in their own way. Maybe I'm just going to be a classic in this one and pick the 1937 one. The simplicity is better. Maybe having things more implied and more mysterious works for me in this sense.
Well,
So that
I
would
will
be
agree.
my.
Like the original one leaves it up to your imagination to imagine some of the things that are going on in the background, right? This one is like kind of everything is kind of laid out for you, so they're hand holding you.
Yes, they absolutely are. They're
Yeah.
leading you to every possible conclusion. So I'm curious to see which Kate picks.
It's really difficult to compare because I think something that people forget is that we're working with a different story structure in some of
Mhm.
these much older Disney films. And so people come into them with assumptions about what the protagonist has to be, how they have to be very strong narratively and have this want versus the need. We're going to go through these specific trials, which I think it's underselling the 1937 to say it failed at that because it just wasn't trying to do that. They were going in more of this like fairy tale storytelling tradition, going from more of, inspired by cartoons that at
Mhm.
that point were very short. So I think if you can get invested in a story that's much more about things just happen, and then something else happened, and then all these things happen to her. If you can enjoy it on that level, personally, I think it's a much more well crafted story.
Mhm.
But that's as long as you kind of have that broader view of what can be a story in film.
Mhm.
If we're looking for the better written protagonist that has more clear wants, that has more clear growth, you have to give it to the newer one. But it's tough because it is a little bit apples and oranges.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next one, which is actually the dwarves. I think
Mhm.
Eddie should start us off with. Let's compare some of the dwarves. Who do we think? Which film has the better representation here?
A better representation, or less creepy.
Well, all right.
So
We already know where this
yeah,
is headed.
so for the animation movie, I mean, they're have the classic dwarfs. I mean, these are the images that I grew up with. That I wouldn't mind having a shirt with them on, that kind of thing. But then you move on to what they were trying to do with the CGI um, dwarfs, and that's when I feel like I didn't enjoy that at all. I did find their appearance a little creepy, uncanny valley kind of thing. I didn't understand why have them look this way and then have an actor there who was a little person also be present too, and I felt that for me there was kind of like my mind was like, wait, what's going on here? So,
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I do think that the 1937 one is overall just less problematic in a weird way, because this new film, it just, again, like you said, Eddie, it is very creepy. It is very kind of unsettling. And I see where they were going with Dopey, right? I applaud the effort that they were trying to do with Dopey and be like, look, he's actually not this daft man. He actually has a soul and he has something to say and he just needs the platform to say it. Super sweet, super cute. Didn't work, unfortunately. I just, I 1937. I don't even know what else to say. Like, there's nothing else to say about it. It just didn't freaking work in the new film.
I think a lot of it didn't work just because of the CGI. The CGI was just such a bad choice. And it was just like, because it is so uncanny. They just look so creepy. And they're interacting with poor Rachel Zegler, who God bless her soul for some of these musical numbers, right? Like she's just here just working her ass off with like these like CGI things, monstrosities really. And they were just so creepy. They were just so creepy. I walked out as soon as Dopey started talking is kind of where I had to like just force myself to relieve myself in the bathroom. I was just done with this film at that point.
Although I will say the creepiest is Happy. I'm sorry, but Happy, like the smiling was just weird, man. It was like a horror movie waiting to happen.
Happy. I feel like Bashful was also kind of creepy. So was Sneezy. I think that big bulbous nose. You say that there was like poor representation of the dwarf. I feel like the dwarfs were treated with such respect in the animated movie. Like they were not made fun of for being small little people. Like they were just like these. They were just old guys who just happened to live together in the woods.
In the 1937 one?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but also, what does Snow White say when she sees them for the first time?
Well, she thought they were little children, right?
She goes, "Oh, you're little men," and she laughs at them. She
That's
like
true.
belittles them, you know, like they are kind of, because of their smaller stature, they're kind of thought of as more comical.
I suppose.
The scene in the 1937 when Snow White is in the glass coffin and the dwarfs weep is so profoundly affecting to me as an adult. I think child Kate did not think anything of it, but it breaks my heart as an adult, and I understand now the anecdotes I see about at the time it was released, grown men brought to tears in the theaters over these cartoon dudes, and how impactful that was for the medium of animation, that people came to respect the artistry of it. And I was so disappointed watching that same sequence with all the same staging, all the same story beats, but set up, and you're watching these CGI faces that have none of that emotion, none of that artistry behind it, and I feel nothing. Even the ones that were a little better animated, I don't care what you say, Dopey is the creepiest of them all. It's not even a competition for me. He is so uncanny. But even the ones that look a little nicer, none of them conveyed that human emotion to me. And which for me, I find them useless as characters. What are you here for? What are you here for?
It's true. The animals showed more emotions than the dwarfs. Right?
Yeah.
And that's crazy. All right. Let's talk about the evil queen. And we're gonna who reigns supreme, the evil queen from the 1937 film or Gal Gadot's performance. I'm just gonna go out and say it, like it was the most lackluster performance I'd seen. It was the reviews do not do her justice. She was so bad in this movie, and I was going in with such an open mind because just like people hate on Gal Gadot for hating on her, and I'm like, no, I take it back. They were right. This was an atrocity. It was just kind of a hate crime in my opinion. Like sitting through that musical number that she did was awful.
Hate crime. That's great.
Right?
And it didn't need to be there. It didn't need to be there. Who made you do that?
I don't, and like we said this in the previous episode, right? It just takes away a lot of the mystique that was around the queen. And she walked into that dark forest of camp, unintentional camp, when she was performing, and it was not clearly not intentional. She was trying to be scary. She was trying to be a force to be reckoned with. She failed in every sense of the word. So no, the original Queen is most definitely the supreme.
Yeah, I feel like I enjoyed much more the animated version of the Queen, just because it's more like symbolic, and also too. So you have the idea of the evil stepmom
Mm-hmm.
idea, then who's also the evil queen, and rules with cruelty. Um, then compared to some cringe lines that you get from the Gakodora character, So
Obviously, I think we're all going to say, the 1937 one, but let's put a name to the witch, to the original evil queen. Her name is Lucille Laverne.
Is that the
She
queen, the
was
actress?
that's the actress that voiced not only the evil queen, but she voiced when she became the elderly woman, right?
Oh, good for her. I didn't know that.
Same actress. She was 65 years old, and they didn't think that she would be able to pull off the voice chops. They thought her voice was like too bright, and she was like, "I'll just fucking show you." And apparently, legend goes is that she took out her false teeth, and then she read those lines, and they were like, "Whoa, okay, yeah, you got the part." So, anyway, it's amazing how they can animate something to be more sinister. Back in 1937, they animated something more sinister than someone can act today. And the transformation scene alone in the 1937 one, remember, I think we talked about this in the original where they were harking on a film adaptation of Jekyll and Hyde from 1931, and they did it all in camera where he takes it, he looks at himself and he's slowly turning, and then they do like a quick like turnaround and he's completely turned into Hyde. And it's still boggles my mind how they did that in 1931. You should look it up on YouTube if you haven't seen it because it's unbelievable. And the way that they animated that like style where you see it all happening in one shot that they're animating is beautiful animation. It's still like watching it on a 4K restoration is a chef's kiss moment,
Mhm.
right? It's just like, oh my God, this is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was watching the new film and I was like, oh my, they're going to homage it. They have to. This is a classic moment. And they don't. And then instead of doing any sort of in-camera trickery or something really cool, they just resort to CGI.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but Gal Gadot does not even try to change her voice as the queen, right? As the elderly woman.
Hag.
As the old hag, yeah. And then she's only the old hag for 5 minutes, and then she turns right back to. It was all just so disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, 100%, no competition for me. The 1937 Lucille Laverne's portrayal.
Kate, what are your thoughts? Is this going to be unanimous?
Yes, although it'd be a pretty hostile room if I was to you're gonna be like, well, I liked her. But no, I don't know that you would be able to find a guest who would do that for you without a lot of money.
Yeah.
That character has scarred generations of children. She's scary. Her vultures are scary. Her witch cackle is scary. I'm scared of her. She's gonna murder you. And there just wasn't an ounce of fear or, like you said, mystique surrounding this performance. And I agree that most people are faulting the performance, and I'm with you there, but I don't think the script did her any favors.
Would also agree on that one too.
Yeah. So we're not going to do a whole comparison of Prince Charming and Jonathan because I don't think there's really a comparison that we can really make there. One is not a fleshed out character at all. So we're going to go right into the eponymous Snow White and comparing the different versions of her. And I'll kick this one off because I think this might be possibly the only time I'm going to pick the 2025 to give away all my other picks. Maybe we'll see. Well, come back to me in the next two categories. But Rachel Zegler really did her best in this movie. And I actually think she did pretty good despite the fact that she was working in front of a green screen with nothing in front of her. And yeah, was just nobody. You were speaking, Rolando, how you feel like Disney set her up to be like the scapegoat and like wants to put her as like, the spokesperson for why this movie failed. I don't think Disney has her back in this. And, it kind of makes me like look at her performance and like, wow, like you really carried this. Like all on your shoulders. Also, they give her a little bit more to work with. At the end of the day, in 1937, there's not much when it comes to Snow White as a character, unfortunately. Right. My main thing that I will say, though, that my fiance pointed out, because my fiance is theatrically trained, is that Would have been nice if they kept her a soprano. We don't really have that many sopranos left, in our musicals. Maybe just Glinda, and that's about it. But the Glinda's only half a soprano half the time anyway.
I'm not going to pretend to know what you're talking about.
So the way she sings, right?
Okay.
Like we were talking about the way she sings too, and like now she just belts. Everybody just belts. But it would have been nice to hear her actually sing some of those higher, like it would have been nice to hear Wishing Well. I'm sorry, I'm so upset Wishing Well didn't make it in the movie. So I'm still have major gripes about that. Yeah, they gave her more to work with, and I don't know. I really applaud what Rachel Zegler did, mostly because I feel terrible for her that she had to carry this whole movie. So I'm going to pick Rachel Zegler. Rolando, what about you?
I mean, I agree with you. Rachel Zegler did, without a doubt, carry this film. She must be so tired. The only time that you could see that she like kind of gave up in the movie was when the huntsman came, because that was like probably the least she gave in this film. Other than that, though, she I liked her a lot, and I think the promo work did a disservice to her, because like they were really kind of like some of the promo shots that they picked for her in the role as Snow White did make her look weird. And I was just like, because when I'm watching her on camera, I'm just like, it doesn't translate like that though. She looked great. She looked fine. She looked beautiful on screen as Snow White. And they gave me a reason for the haircut, which I'm also happy for, because like that hair was on those promo shots and on the trailers. I was just like, what were they thinking with that wig? So with that said, I if you guys remember the original Snow White, I did call her insufferable, because it was just like her body language and stuff. And granted, this is a 1937 film. They're basing this off of 1937 stars, so I understand. As much as I did like Rachel Zegler, there is something to be said about why the 1937 one still works. Like, she is a classic for a reason. So I'm kind of torn. I think Rachel Zegler did a great work with this role, but the 1937 still feels like the definitive Snow White to me.
Eddie, what about you?
No, I was going with the live action one.
You're going with Rachel Zegler?
Yeah.
Kate, Snow White.
Oh, I've got to give it to Rachel Zegler.
Okay.
I really quite like the original Snow White, if you appreciate her for what she is and not try to force her into the box of a contemporary protagonist. But I was absolutely enchanted by this performance. The vocals were amazing, but we kind of knew they would be. So it's almost, we're so spoiled with Rachel Zegler that we're like, yeah, the voice of an angel, blah, blah, blah. What else is new? But I was really impressed by the physicality she brought. I thought she was able to incorporate just a little bit of that movement that sometimes can look a little unnatural. Sometimes the Snow White performers for Disney or like the Disney parks, they try to imitate that. And this is bad on a audio medium, but I'm doing the little thing with my hands
exactly
where she's always sort of twisting her hands up, palms up, and going, oh, which, yes, can look really, really unnatural when a live person does it. But there was just a hint of that in her performance, in her scene running through the forest. And when I was able to recognize those flashes of inspiration from the 1937, I thought that was really, really beautiful.
I think I saw it the most, actually, now that you're pointing it out, in the Whistle While You Work song.
Yes, like, the way she picks up her skirt.
Yeah, and mind you, she's working with that horrible costume for her to still like be able to emote things, right? Because like that's a heavy competition. Every time I saw that costume, I was just like, God, get this off screen right now.
Yeah, I had a visceral reaction just then, because that dress hurts my feelings, hurts it very deeply. I don't understand what Tool is doing in this world that they've created. I will say I hate it a little less having seen the movie, but I don't understand this dress in the world. I don't understand, based on the world building they've given us and the character of Snow White they've given us, why is this in her closet? Why are these materials people wear in this world? Yep. And why is it ugly? If we're not going to care about those first two things, if we're not going to care about what this means for the character and how it immerses us, at least make it look awesome. It should look amazing. And they
also didn't weather the costumes to make them look like they're lived in. Everything looks brand
No.
new.
She looked, after running through the forest, after
Mhm.
spending the night at the dwarves' cottage, her hair is pristine.
Mhm.
None of the characters have a smudge of dirt anywhere. The clothes are as wrinkle-free and perfectly buttoned as they were at the beginning of the movie. It gives, and I think probably a lot of this has to do with continuity for all the reshooting they did.
Mm.
Because this is a very kind of patchwork movie, but everything exists in kind of a weird liminal time. Yeah, there's no life in it. There's no reality in the clothing.
Yeah.
Now comes something that I've been dying to talk about, the music.
The music.
Yeah, we got some new music for this new one. So actually, Kate, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the music between the 1937 film and the 2025.
Yes, the music in the 1937 is also, I think, wonderful if you accept it for what it is. If you try to force it a little bit into a box, both in terms of structure of the roles that the songs play in more contemporary Disney movies, then it doesn't quite fit right. If you're comparing it to contemporary styles, obviously it's not what a lot of kids today are going to be looking for. But it's beautiful. It's classic for a reason. I really enjoy the songs in the original, so I'm going to give it to the original because the new one was really hit or miss for me. Most of the new ones fell flat for me, with the exception of Waiting on a Wish, which I think it's good they're using that a lot in the promo because I think that's a really wonderful one. And the performances from Rachel Zegler are unimpeachable,
Mhm.
but the villain song fell flat for me. The love song fell flat for me. Most of the other performances are nothing special. So I was a little surprised, but I was really underwhelmed by the new music.
Same. I would agree with that. I am pretty familiar with these composers. I listened to Dear Evan Hansen. I listened to The Greatest Showman, and I actually think that their lyrics for La La Land are pretty good. And they actually did a musical. Oh, I think it's called Dogfight. That my partner, being a big fan of musical theater, I'm familiar with these guys' work. And the moment I heard the first song, I was like, okay, yeah, I know who composed this. And I enjoyed the first number. I thought it was pretty good. And I thought every song subsequently, the first two, the Good Things Grow and Wishing on a Well, everything just kind of went downhill from that. And some of the lyrics were really painful to sit through and listen to.
I think
And I couldn't believe that they didn't do a West Side Story where they recontextualized and reworked somewhere to maybe, just make like update it for Someday My Prince Will Come. That is one of the most iconic songs in Disney history. It's one of the most beautiful melodies that's ever been written for a Disney film, and they completely omitted it from it. I'm not okay with that. Like, I was waiting for that song in some way or another. Yes, I know that this Snow White is not waiting for her prince to come, but again, you could rework it. And you kept in the silly song and you kept in Hi Ho and Whistle While You Work and didn't keep that in. And of course, we all know how my feelings on the Wishing Well. So I'm a little upset, that they took out some of those classic songs and kept it with just like really bland, just blah songs. I was wondering, if I took these songs and I put them in another musical, and if I heard them, would I like them, or is it just in the context of the Snow White film? And I really quickly listened to them on Spotify again. I'm like, no, it's the songs. I just don't think that they're actually that strong. So I'm going to go with the 1937. I'm a fan of the old movie musicals too. I was telling Rolando, I really like the old movie musicals where they're just two people who stand next to each other and operatically sing to one another. That was really huge in the 30s in this country.
yes, you showed
So
me. You showed me.
I showed you a clip too.
Uh-huh.
I also really like Yankee Doodle Dandy.
Which maybe your
Rolando's
listeners know my
favorite
least
movies.
favorite movie.
Yeah. So I'm partial as an old soul who's really drawn to, older films too. The 1937 one is always music wise going to be it for me. It was really hard to beat that one. So, Eddie,
Eddie,
what about you?
It was nothing special for me. I mean, Waiting on a Wish, I think was the only one that I would think that maybe sparked some emotion, um, for towards this character. I've been watching Disney movies all my life, so and I own several soundtracks from Disney movies. But let's say I wouldn't want to buy this one.
I I think that's fair. I think most definitely like Princess Problems, forgettable. I don't remember that song. I certainly am not going to be able to erase the Evil Queen song not for the right reasons though, just because of that visually. It was a nightmare. It was a true nightmare, and this lyrically, it kind of. I remember it sounding just stupid. I don't remember the lyrics, but I just remember it sounding just silly, and it was just like not good. So yeah, Nicole, I agree with you. And Kate and everyone, like, yeah, the original film most certainly had the better music. I know I made fun of like the way Snow White and the prince were kind of just singing each other because he just come out of the woods. He's just like, oh, right, and it was hilarious, sure, to modern audiences, but it still worked for the film, as did the music itself from the actual original film. Like, "Wishing Well" is a good song. "Whistle While You Work," the original version of it, still holds up. And "Someday My Prince Will Come." It's just you're right, Nicole. It is a classic, right? I don't know if it's like yeah, no, it's easily one of like the greatest of Disney songs, period. And it's I think it's a bummer that I they only used two of the original songs from the original one, right? Which is wild to me. And with Hi Ho, they kind of also gave us like they made it longer, but it didn't make it better. Which is wild to me, right? Like, Kate, I saw this in your video, but you called this out that they introduced also like a little bit of background to the power that the dwarves have, but like you pointed out, it never gets brought up again.
I have gotten to tell this to like 3 different people that haven't seen the movie, and it's funny every time that I get to tell them in one of the new verses to Hi Ho. And you could just end the conversation there. That's horrible enough to consider.
Mhm.
But they show us that the dwarfs have a magic ability, and their palms light up, they glow red, and then they touch the veins of gems in the stone of the mine, and it all lights up into this beautiful nebula all around them. And it is never brought up again. I don't even mean it's never important. I mean, if you were in the bathroom when that happened, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know it happened. It's this weird remnant from some earlier draft of the script that they didn't bother to take out because they'd already, I assume, spent so much on the CGI of it.
That's true, yeah.
But it helps us not at all. It doesn't help us understand the dwarfs' relationship with the gems. They still have to mine it. They still have pickaxes. It doesn't add to the world or our understanding of the characters, much less the plot. And that's very, I think, characteristic of the film as a whole. You see all these dangling threads left over from where they made changes and rewrites and reshoots, and it's very kind of jarring to watch.
Which I guess we should then just conclude this, you know, just comparing our films. Which one do we like better? Do we like the 1937 film or the 2025 film? I don't think it's going to be a stretch here, but I think we all kind of are leaning a certain way. But I'll just kick things off. You know what? Respect to the original one. You know what? Like, I've heard some commenters talking about how the original film, like, even though it's like, sure, it's historically important, it's not necessarily a good film. It doesn't have a good protagonist. I've heard some commentators, right? And I was inclined to agree with that. But then if I had to compare it to the new one, I had to go back and say, like, no, you know what? I take it back. You're wrong. This is an enjoyable film. This is absolutely should not have been touched. Unless we're going to do something really spectacular, we should have just left it alone, in my opinion. You know? So I'm gonna go back. All those naysayers say it's just like like Snow White was never a good princess, sure, but like it's still a good movie, and it is historical for a reason, I would say. The animation, it still holds up. It is still a gorgeous piece of work to look at.
Well, story wise, I mean, I feel I like the live action compared to the
Okay.
animation. I mean, but like what we
Ooh.
discussed before, it's just different. It's a different story format and how we're taking it into. Um, I think there was some potential here for this movie to be something a little bit better.
Hmm.
Um, and then I walked away thinking, well, I know kids will probably like this.
Okay, so Rolando and I have this ongoing debate as to what's the key element that makes a movie a movie. And, Rolando's like, I think one of the most important aspects of a film is the story. And I've always disagreed with that because I think that it depends on the type of movie, it depends on the country, it depends on a lot of things. But to me, story is not first. And I think this is the perfect example of like a film where I'm like, hey, look at how story first in terms of the Snow White 2025, and the 1937 one is more atmosphere. The 1937 one is more like of a feeling and a mood that they're going for. It's incredibly evocative. And again, it is imagery over anything in that movie. That is what is at the forefront there. And I think it makes it, because of that, and that what it focuses on, it does really right. Again, okay, you're absolutely right. It wasn't as focused on story. It wasn't about like plot driven. And because of that, they just put their efforts elsewhere. And where they put their efforts, they aced it. And they made, the highest grossing movie for a year until Gone with the Wind took it over. And it was like completely lauded, and it blew people's freaking minds back in the day. And that's not one of those things where it's like, try and picture it. Because again, if you watch a 4K print of this movie, it will still blow you away. It is gorgeous. It's a good freaking watch. So it's amazing how much that film still holds up. So absolutely, for me, 1937.
Kate, closing thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're comparing the whole work, you have to give it to the 37, in my opinion. It is so much more cohesive, and it immerses you in that, just like you were saying, Nicole, in that mood, in that sensory experience. I feel so transported. I have to give it to the 37. But it does a little bit break my heart to do so, because there were so many moments in the 2025 where I saw flashes of a better movie. There are a couple individual scenes I really love. I'm going to shout out again the running away scene into the dark, scary forest, and a couple other sequences. And I just felt that I could see little remnants of a better version of the script, maybe a better edit of the movie, that it has this unrealized potential, which makes it so much sadder to think about than a movie that was just kind of mid the whole time.
So do you have any closing thoughts at all about like the film and the properties, or just, its place in Disney history that you'd like to share?
I'm curious to see the legacy of this movie in another 10, 20 years. I think the live action project that Disney is in right now is an interesting chapter, and I think many people at Disney would love to see these newer versions in some ways replace the old, to refresh marketing, refocus kind of how these characters are working. And I think it's very possible some of these movies will last, but on the whole, I think if anyone watches Snow White 2025 in 30 years, it will be because the machine that is Disney has done something almost impossible, which is drag this movie kicking and screaming through time.
Mm-hmm.
I think left to our own devices, we as a movie-going people, we as a capital C culture, dare I say, I think we'll leave this behind.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. Actually, this actually brings up one question I have in terms of the Disney marketing princesses. Has the new live action animation princesses, like, have they crossed over into like the way the new princesses are marketed? Like, have they changed the designs to kind of more match the look of some of the new princesses? For example, like in the closing of the film, how they made the new Snow White look in the book, right? She was clearly much more Latina looking. Like, that's something you think we'll see like in the marketing for the Disney princesses?
So in merch, as it exists right now, you have merchandise for the individual films. So Little Mermaid is a really good example of this, obviously, because the visuals are so distinct. The Little Mermaid, the live action, has its own distinct brand of merchandise. That is as different from the animated one as it would be to any other movie. My particular interest is in the Disney princess kind of super brand, and that remains attached, at least for now, to the animated versions. So when they started making a live action Cinderella, live action Little Mermaid, all of these versions, I have not yet seen the visuals of those movies integrate into the Disney princess brand. I won't say never, but it would surprise me to see that happen. For now, they really have sort of sequestered them.
Okay. Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, I guess that was my question, right? Because like, you made a great point. Like in 30 years, like if Disney is still making us hold these movies in some high regard, right? Like, I guess you're right, the marketing worked. And then I was wondering, like, oh, have they started capitalizing on the marketing in any way yet? Do you have any interest in the Lilo and Stitch movie? Because that's the only one right now that I'm like looking forward to, quite honestly. Like, I don't care what people say, that Stitch looks adorable and I will watch it. He's one of my favorite Disney animated movies. That's why.
Yeah, Lilo and Stitch, the original, is quite close to my heart. And I experienced such a roller coaster of emotions watching the new trailer. I was shocked at how good Stitch looked. I was
Mhm.
like, oh man, I think they actually did translate this pretty well. But I was quickly confused and saddened by some of the choices made. I don't love all of the casting decisions, and
Mhm.
I am outraged on behalf of Pleakley. Give him back his dress. Give
I
his back his
agree.
wig. He needs his dress. He needs it now.
He walked so Roger Smith of American Dad could run. He said it's just like,
Yes.
why are we moving his place in queerness? Let's be real, queerness is how to describe it. Like,
Why would a man be there? That was, I think
Mhm.
I said that out loud watching the trailer.
Mhm.
Give him a dress, cowards.
Katie, thank you so much for joining us. It was absolutely a pleasure to hear your thoughts on this. And guys, if you have thoughts on the new Snow White, on both Snow Whites, on Disney as a whole, you can share your thoughts. You should comment to this video, like, subscribe, all that jazz. And until next time,
Stay unoriginal.